It's David Ducker coming back at you. And today, going to be talking about RPG horror stories. This is the horror of having no captain on the ship. This was a one-shot that I ran for my local group of players. Is it my fault? Maybe. Is it the players' fault? Maybe. I don't know exactly where the blame lies, but I trusted my players, and I shouldn't have. So I don't know if that's my fault for trusting them, or their fault for thinking that they knew better than me in my own one shot. But it was a brutal session. I said to my players, let's do a one shot because we don't have somebody here. Edamar wasn't there that night, or somebody wasn't there. I said, let's do a one shot in which we get ambassadors from the Dwarven Empire coming up through and meeting up with the elves to forge a peace between dwarfs and elves. And I said, Mike, you should be like the captain of the dwarf sky ship, and Scotty, you should be the elven ambassador. Because we had like 2 players. So I'm like, that's perfect, great. And those are in the story, I figure those are the 2 most important roles. And they both said, oh, no. We want to be dwarfs. Scotty wanted to be a berserker sky marine with a big axe and full plate up on the deck of the ship. And Mike wanted to be a sniper, like a musketeer in the age of arquebuses. And originally, a musket was just an enormous arquebus. You needed like a stand to balance it on before you could really fire, because they were so huge you couldn't fire it without this stand. That's the original musket. Later muskets were actually smaller than arquebuses. Much confusion. And I said, I don't know, guys. The captain and the ambassador are really where it's at. And they said, no. It'll be fine, Dave. Don't worry. I said, okay, I trust you. So I don't know whose fault this was. My fault for trusting them, or their fault for making characters that I did not recommend for the story. That I disrecommended for the story. But anyway, we go through. The dwarf captain has a big meeting with the dwarf king. The king says, go to the elves and forge a peace. Give them this treaty. You are my ambassador. Negotiate on my behalf. So the 2 NPCs have this big scene. And then they leave. They get on the sky ship. They fly out. Flying in, they see the dwarf, or the elf city, which is in the boughs of an enormous tree, rising up out of the great forest. The sea of green leaves, the dwarfs call it. And they see that the elven city is besieged. It's surrounded by goblins and orcs and ogres. And they have a giant troll with 4 arms and 8 heads. And it's giant. It's freaking enormous. So the sky ship fights its way through. The goblin bat riders and the orcs are firing catapults, or the ogres are shot-putting boulders. So we have this aerial combat scene. Goblins are crashing on the deck and pulling out their scimitars. Nice little combat scene. Much fun was had, no problem. Get to the elven city. The captain meets with the king of the elves now. So now these 2 NPCs have a scene while the PCs sit off to the side. This is a second scene. Talking between NPCs while the PCs sit off to the side. The elves say, we need your help. We'll agree to anything in your treaty, but you need to help us. And the dwarf captain says, we can't get anybody here in time. The mountains are way too far away. Our mountains. The elf says, have no fear. We have an ancient pact with a dragon who lies in the mountains that are closer to our city. And they have a little map. They know where things are. Go to this dragon. Take our ambassador. And he will entreat the dragon to come back and rescue us. So the dwarf captain says, great, we'll do that. So now the elven ambassador and some eagle knights join up. And they take off. They're flying out. They leave the sea of green leaves, the forest. They leave that behind. They're over the plains. They see the human settlements and kingdoms. They see a human, they think it's a caravan. Then they notice all the banners and pennants and horses. And it's the Baron's army. They set down the sky ship. The captain goes and talks to the Baron. So we have the two NPCs talking again. The elven ambassador's there too, but he's also an NPC. So the NPCs all talk. The humans ambush the dwarfs. The dwarfs are trying to figure out where exactly is this dragon. The humans are on their way to hunt some dragons. So they've already scouted the dragons out. They know where it is. So they tell the dwarves, but then they ambush them. They're trying to steal their arquebuses and sky ship, because humans don't have that technology. So we have our second combat scene. It's great, fun little combat scene. You know, knights versus arquebusers and sky marines. Great fun. They run off the knights. They get in the sky ship. They take off, head over to the mountains, track down the dragon. We come in, the elven ambassador talks to the dragon. Again, two NPCs having a big role-playing scene, while the PCs sit off to the side. This is the fourth time that's happened. My players are so bored, because all they've done is combat. They've done some role-playing, but none of the important role-playing. They haven't taken those important roles. So the NPCs convinced the dragon to join up with them. So now the sky ship takes off, heading right back to the elf tree. The dragon is flying alongside. We come up to the tree. The dragon attacks the Jotun troll, the giant 8-headed 4-armed troll. You know, they're canceling each other out. The sky ship is loosing cannons. The goblin bat riders are flying up. The elven eagle knights are flying down. You know, the orcs and huge battle. Chaos. Very fun battle. The elves are victorious. You know, and then we go through our epilogues. The combat was all very fun. You know, we had the sky combat, the ground combat, the big battle. 3 very nice little combats. But in between that, we had 4 role-playing scenes, which could have been very fun, but the players chose characters who could not be involved in such. And that negated a lot of the fun, especially for my players who love role-playing. You know, combat's fine and all, but they love role-playing. They didn't get to do much of it. So I know they were bored and upset, because they told me, because we have a very good rapport, and they said, Dave, we didn't get to do anything. And I said, well, you should have played the captain and the ambassador like I told you to. And they said, well, we thought we could inject ourselves into the scenes. And I said, I thought you could too, but you didn't. So, and you know, it's gone and done with now. It's not like anybody has a lasting grudge. But I was bored just talking to myself the whole time, and they were bored just watching me talk to myself the whole time in those role-playing scenes. So the moral of the story is, pick a character who will have agency. Make sure that the leader of the faction, the person in charge who makes decisions and has agency, is a player character. Otherwise, you'll just be running through the combat and you don't control your own destiny. If you don't control your own destiny, just play a video game or read a book. But the great thing about role-playing games is you can control your own destiny. You can change the world. You have power. You have an impact. You can shape and mold and sculpt. That's the creativity. That's what role-playing gives us that books and video games don't give us, or give us to a very limited degree. Some video games give it to us at a very limited degree. So that is my horror story of no captains. No captaincy was had that day. And until I see you again, good day and good gaming.